Hi everybody, greetings and salutations from what can only be described as a stunning day here in Cape Town. Yeah, winter's holding off, it seems. We're not complaining about that in this part of the world just yet, but we're going to need the water soon. Well, you know, the last time I spoke to you, I mentioned a war story that I had heard from a member of the Zulu Scouts. And today I'd like to relate another story that I heard, this time from a really illustrious regiment, none other than the British South Africa Police. And it was something related to me by a retired inspector. And one of the things that I found quite interesting was the story behind their regimental march. Now, if you'll just allow me to digress for a moment, and believe me, there is a point to all this. When I was much younger, and perhaps not as wise as I should have been, I spent a great deal of my life in the cinemas, and I was absolutely fascinated by the movies, black and white films. And of course, for a youngster, what could be more interesting than the old cowboy movies? And those were the days when the good guys wore white hats and the bad guys were dressed in black, and you could tell a mile off who was who. But one of the things that sort of made me wonder was, why was there so much singing? It seemed like at the strangest moments in the story, the cowboy would pluck out his guitar and he'd be sitting on his horse and he'd start singing away. But what I did not know, and I only discovered many, many years later, was that a cowboy with a good singing voice was a great asset. It was a practical skill. Let's say, for example, the herd is stopped at night and it's bedded down, and it's your turn to go and take care of them, be on the perimeter of all these animals. And so you'd get up and you'd be listening, and you'd hear, oh, there's Joe singing over there, and John is singing over here on this side. There's nothing in the front there, it's all very quiet. Well, that's where you'll head for, because you know that part of the herd is not being covered at the moment. And so as you approach your position, you'd start singing. The animals, it seemed, were quite happy to have another beast approach them out of the darkness, provided somebody was sitting on his back and singing. And so it had a calming and a soothing effect on the livestock. Now, two cowboys came to Rhodesia in the pioneering days, and they brought with them some of the songs. And cowboys were like soldiers. In the evening, when the day's work is done, they'd sit around and tell stories and sing. And these two guys did this too. They joined the police force, the British South Africa Company's police, and they'd sing. And one of the songs they sang made quite an impression on everybody, and they decided to modify it slightly and to make it the British South Africa Company's regimental march, Komakai.
Come along, boys, listen to my tale. Tell you of my troubles on the Old Chisholm Trail. Come a tie-yi, yippee-yippee-yi, yippee-yay. Come a tie-yi, yippee-yippee-yay. With my foot in the stirrup and my hand on the horn, I'm the best damn cowboy ever was born. I'm a tie-yi, yippee-yippee-yi, yippee-yay. Come a tie-yi, yippee-yippee-yay. On a $10 horse and a $40 saddle, going into punching them longhorn cattle. Come a tie-yi, yippee-yippee-yi, yippee-yay. I'm a tie-yi, yippee-yippee-yay.
So I'm working here in Cape Town, and the company where I'm employed take on a new security manager. And the man is introduced to me, and to my absolute delight, I discover that he's a Rhodesian. More so, that he was a reasonably high-ranking officer in the British South Africa Police. So you can imagine he and I have got quite a bit of common ground and a lot to talk about. And so many's a time during our lunch breaks and tea breaks, if we didn't have anything else to do, we would sit and talk in my office. Even though at that time there may have been a bush war, nevertheless civil society still had to continue on a lawful and orderly basis, and that was the prime function of the police, to see to that. So he tells me that at the Highfields police station was a young patrol officer, and if I remember correctly, I think he said the man's name was Mike. Now Mike was very much in love. It was a contact. I understand that his sister had arranged it. It was an old school friend of hers who had been living in Umtali and had now recently relocated to Salisbury. And Mike had spoken to her on the telephone a couple of times, but he'd never met her. But he was so attracted by the sound of her voice that he reckoned she must be every bit as lovely as she sounded. And so he plucked up enough courage to ask her to meet him after work one day, and perhaps they could go for a cup of coffee. So, and she readily agreed. Well, he was he was looking forward to that very much, and on the appointed day, he was understandably, I think, quite nervous. Just before the end of his shift, when he was due to be relieved, a garbled message arrives at the Highfields charge office to the effect that there's a Sekuru lying in the road, dead, at Machipisa shopping centre. So somebody needs to go and see what's going on there. All they know is that there's no foul play involved. The man seemingly has died of natural causes. The body is causing an obstruction in the road. There's a crowd gathered around there, and Mike is told, look, jump on a bike, go down there, see what's going on. Oh, you know, I can't be late. I've got a very, very important appointment straight after work. Isn't there anybody else that can go? No, he's told there's nobody that can go, but don't worry, you won't be delayed. We're sending a Land Rover with a body box, and he'll be just a few minutes behind you. So just get there and don't leave the body, just take charge of the situation. As soon as the body is in the body box, just, you know, come on back here, and then that'll be it. So he jumps on the motorbike, you know, the ones with the big leather pannier bags on the sides, and off he goes down the road to Machipisa shopping centre. And he arrives there, and it's as it's been reported, there's a Sekuru lying in the road. Now, a Sekuru is a word for an elderly African man, a sort of a grandfather figure, if you like. So here's this old gentleman lying there, his eyes wide open and no pulse, and he's obviously dead. The witnesses say he was seen sitting on the side of the road, and he got up after a while and then wandered into the street. A few cars blew their hooters at him, and then he just sort of sunk down on his knees and then fell flat on his face. So somebody had tried to help him and turned him over, but they'd left him because they saw, you know, he was beyond any sort of assistance. So Mike, okay, that's fine, you know, but now where's this Land Rover with a body box? And he gazes anxiously up the road and at his watch, and time is passing by, and there's no sign of this vehicle. Now this was before the days of cell phones, and you know, he didn't even have a radio on that motorbike. So he walked over to a store, asked if he could use the phone, paid for the call, and got in touch with the Highfields charge office. What's happening with the body box? There's no body box available. What do you mean there's no body box available? Well, keep your shirt on. We got one coming from Salisbury Central, and they're sending a vehicle with, they'll come and deal with it. But how long will that take? Oh, it shouldn't be long. You stay there with the corpse. You can't leave it, okay? Just stay there. So he puts the phone down, he walks back again. He looks at the old man, he walks over to his motorbike, he walks back to the old man, he looks at his watch, and he can see, man, I'm not gonna make this appointment tonight, and I have no way of contacting this girl. She's gonna be standing there on the side of the road, wondering, what's happened to me. So eventually he decides something's got to be done, something really drastic, if he has to have any chance of saving the situation. So he speaks to some of the people in the crowd there, and of course, not everybody is entirely enthusiastic about his plan. And he singles out about 3 or 4 strong-looking guys. And Mike climbs on the bike, and he gets them to pick the old man up and put him on the pillion. And they stick each of his feet into one of the pannier bags. So there he's sitting astride the pillion, and he's got his feet in the saddlebags, and Mike unclips the brace of his belt. Now, you may remember the patrol officers, they didn't wear a sand brown belt, which had a brace over the right shoulder, but rather over the left shoulder. So he unclipped this, and these guys managed to get it around the old Sekuru's waist, and this they sort of tucked in to the belt and then tied a knot and somehow secured him. And all the while Mike was giving instructions, "Sunga mushi, Sunga mushi." Tighten it up nicely, guys, please. And then, as a safeguard, somebody thought it would be a good idea to just stick his hands in Mike's tunic pockets. So there the Sekuru was on the back of the bike, leaning against Mike's back with his head between his shoulder blades, and facing right. And Mike set off. And thankful that there were at least some people that weren't that superstitious that they wouldn't assist. And that they weren't that squeamish. So he's going now in the direction of the charge office, and he's really hoping that he's going to see this Land Rover approaching him soon. So he'll just stop on the side of the road, and they can take the corpse off the back of the bike, and hopefully that will be it. But there's no sign of this vehicle. When he arrives at the charge office, he glances again at his watch, and he sees, no man, if I go in there with his body on the back, I'm going to be delayed even longer. I'm not going to be able to make it, to my rendezvous. I may as well just go straight. The Harare Central Hospital is just up ahead. I'll just go straight there, and they can put him in the morgue, and that'll be it. And I'll just borrow the police bike for this evening and scoot off to Salisbury. So, having decided that, he keeps one hand on the twist grip, and the other hand he's holding behind him. He got hold of the Sekuru there to make sure he doesn't slip off, and he guns it down the road, past Southerton, past the factories on the right-hand side, across the intersection at Manchester Road, still going strong, no problems. And up ahead on the left is the turn off to the hospital. And again he looks at his watch and he sees, nope, if I go in there, that's it, I'm going to miss this girl. And they had agreed to meet on the corner of 3rd Street and Union Avenue. So he thought perhaps I could stop outside the Ambassador Hotel and somehow get off the bike without creating too much of a stir there, and then I can walk up the road and just go and meet this girl. So all these thoughts are going through his mind. So he's down Highfields Road, gets to Paisley Road, catches a left over there, over the railway lines, along the road that runs past Belvedere, and up toward the showgrounds, and there is Jameson Avenue. He turns to his right. Now we start getting into the proper built-up area. He sees people looking at him quite curiously, and others just don't even notice him. And as he slows down at the Moffat Street intersection, he's aware of one of these delivery vehicles next to him that delivers glass. You know, they got brackets on the side of them, and they got this plate glass that they use in shop windows and that, and they suspended on the outside of the vehicle. So one of these comes past. Mike is tapped off a bit now because he wants to change lanes. His intention is to go down 2nd Street, and he's in the wrong lane. So he slows down and he looks to his right to let this vehicle come past so that he can move over, and he sees his reflection and the reflection of the Sekuru. The Sekuru sitting on the back of the bike with his head between Mike's shoulder blades and his jaws fallen open, and he's got these big bulging eyes. So no wonder people are staring at him. Now Mike is thinking, oh man, you know, I better not let the girl see this. You know, this is going to be a really difficult thing to explain away. Anyway, they're up at 2nd Street. He turns right there, down to Union Avenue, catches a left, and man, the pavement is just full of pedestrians. And he's thinking, I can't stop here, you know, you know, this is not going to work. I'm just going to have to get up to 3rd Street and take the corner there and, you know, try and explain this away. Hopefully the girl will be on the left-hand side of the road, and she won't see the features of this old man. So sure enough, he gets to 3rd Street, and swings there around the corner, and there is this girl. She's waiting there. And at first glance, from what he sees, she's as beautiful as they expected her to be. But standing next to her is an elderly gentleman. And first Mike thought, well, maybe there's a fellow office worker who's just kind of waiting there with her, you know. So he parks kind of on the opposite side of the road. Well, it's a dual carriage, you know, sort of, with a little island in the middle and trees and that. It's a very quiet sort of street, and he parks on the right hand side of this lane. So Mike stops there, and the girl walks over immediately, and this gentleman comes with her. So she says, "Are you Mike?" He said, "Yeah, hello," and whatever her name was, Heather. Nice to meet you, and shook hands, and she said, "I'd like you to meet my father." Oh dear, well, this wasn't part of the plan. They were going to go for a cup of coffee, but he hadn't he hadn't figured on coming there with a corpse. So the coffee was out in any event, but the fact that the old man was there, the father, that meant there's no chance of going off to have anything. And the father's looking so curiously at Mike, and he's looking at the Sekuru, and he's looking at Mike again, and he's frowning. But the girl is, you know, it's like she's not seeing anything. All she's seeing is Mike with his nice uniform on this nice shiny BSA motorbike, and so she says to him she's sorry she can't stay long because her mom and dad came shopping, and Daddy, you know, thought that he'd like to ride back with me back home. They live together as a family. So Mike says, no, that's fine. So she says, but if you're interested, would you care to come for lunch on Sunday if you're not working? So he says, oh, I'd love to do that. So she says, I've written down the directions to our home, and you know, and she gives it to him, and she's trying to explain to him where they live. Now, while all this is going on, the father is very restless, you know. He steps up to the motorbike, and he kind of looks at the old man, and then he says to Mike, "Excuse me, what's the story with this passenger of yours?" So Mike says, he's a drunk, man. I picked him up on the side of the road because he was a danger to everybody. You know, he was wandering into the traffic. So, you know, I'm sort of on my way to taking him to the charge office. So he says, drunk. So he said, yeah, he's been sleeping most of the time while I've had him on the back of the bike. You know, I just had to, you know, to kind of tie him up to, you know, for his own good. So the old man seems kind of satisfied, but on the other hand, he looks as though he doesn't believe Mike. So they're still talking, Mike and the girl, about how to get to her home, and the old man clears his throat. This is now the father. So he says, son, I think if I was you, I'd start this motorbike up and go wherever you're going in a hurry. Oh. So he looks at the old man, and, you know, he must be a real crusty old guy. Probably doesn't approve much of me, you know, seeing his daughter. But that's very unusual, because in Rhodesia, and forgive me, I hope I'm not talking out of turn here, you know, the policemen were highly regarded. And if your daughter was going out with a policeman, well, that was good, eh? I mean, that wasn't bad. So Mike looks at the father, and he thinks, is he trying to say something here? You know, I don't want to be embarrassed in front of the girl, but I also don't want to appear to be rude. So he said, oh, I'll be going in a moment, sir. So the father steps up to Mike, puts his hand on his shoulder, puts his mouth close to his ear, and he whispers fiercely, what I'm trying to tell you is your prisoner's sprung a leak. What? Mike tries to look behind him, but of course he can't do that, you know. So he just makes a very, very quick apology over there, gets the bike going, and scoots off. Well, I listened to this story, and of course I had a bit of a laugh at it. I said, what happened? So my friend tells me, well, he nearly got thrown out of the force. He said there was a lot of trouble. So I said, oh, I suppose it was the end of his romance with a girl. He said, no, on the contrary. Last I heard was they still happily married, and they've got 2 teenage girls. So he said it all ended very well. Yeah, love conquers all, eh? Even if you bring a corpse along to your first date. Folks, I'm gonna stop there, all right? I'm not going to go on for much longer. I just want to thank you all again for your support and your kind wishes. I say that all the time, but it's really, I really do mean it. Thank you very much. I'm in good health. For those of you who are wondering, I haven't felt better in years. I've got to tell you, those American doctors know what they're doing. Wow, what a great country. So I wish you all good health, and you know, take care wherever you are, and look after yourself. God bless you, and cheers for now.